A major update from the U.S. Supreme Court on that Texas redistricting case. You'll remember Republicans in the state, in an unusual mid-decade review, redrew the maps, the congressional maps, earlier this year. Let's get right to CNN Chief Supreme Court Analyst Joan Biskupic. Joan, what is the latest news from the U.S. Supreme Court?
Very big news, Jake, both politically and legally. The Supreme Court, the conservative majority over the dissent of the three liberals, has said that Texas can use the map that it drew last summer to provide potentially 5 new districts that could flip Republican and enhance the Republican majority in the U.S. House. And what they said is that a special U.S. District Court panel that had invalidated this map, saying it was drawn on unconstitutional racial lines, that Texas had actually divided people up by race. This district court had said that, and Texas had come up here and appealed it, backed by the Trump administration. Today, the Supreme Court majority said no, that this map deserved more deference from the district court. The district court should have taken into account a presumption of legislative good faith. That's been a standard that Chief Justice John Roberts and Justice Samuel Alito have been really pushing over the years, to sort of let states do what they want to do, even if there could be a cloud of racial division there. So you had the conservative majority essentially now locking in this new Texas map that you remember has triggered all this off-year redistricting throughout the country, and at the goading of President Trump to shore up his majority. Let me tell you a little bit about what the liberal dissenters said had happened here. Justice Kagan, writing on behalf of herself and Sonia Sotomayor and Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, pointed to the fact that a district court had held 9 days of hearing, combed through thousands of pages of testimony about what had gone on in Texas, and this district court had also put a lot of attention on a letter from the Office of Civil Rights in the Trump administration that had pushed the Texas legislature to draw along racial lines. And the district court had found that indeed that this had been an unconstitutional racial gerrymander, that it wasn't drawn just on political lines, which, Jake, is allowed under the Constitution. You can divide people up based on their politics, but you cannot divide people up based on their race. And that's what the district court said had done there. And let me just tell you what Justice Elena Kagan said in dissent about that. What basis does the majority have to thus substitute its understanding of the direct evidence for the district courts? The short answer is it has none. So this is the end of the line for this Texas map. It can be used going forward now for the midterm elections, Jake.
All right, Joan Biskupic, thanks so much. Let's bring in CNN's Jeff Zeleny and also CNN senior legal analyst Ellie Honig. Ellie, your reaction?
Well, Jake, this is going to have major consequences for the 2026 midterms. As the justices appear to acknowledge, this means Texas will get to use its revised map, the new map that would give Republicans up to 5 or majority Republican districts. Now, that's also, it's important to understand, this is not just some procedural stay. Sometimes we see the Supreme Court say, we're just putting it on hold for now. The 6 conservatives in the majority here say Texas likely will ultimately win on this issue. And as Joan said, the disagreement here is this new map a racially based gerrymander? The 6 conservatives in the majority seem to say no, and the 3 liberals, in a furious dissent, it's 17 of the 20 pages of this ruling, say, yes, this was a racial gerrymander. It should have been struck down. Let me just read you one thing that I think encapsulates it. This is from the very end of the dissent written by the liberal justices. They write, this court's decision today, guarantees that Texas's new map, with all its enhanced partisan advantage, will govern next year's elections for the House of Representatives. That result, as this court has pronounced year in and year out, is a violation of the Constitution. So you have your 6-3 split, conservatives on one side, liberals on the other, but Texas will get to use its changed pro-Republican map in 2026.
And Jeff, the Texas Democratic Party just issued a statement that says, in part, quote, the Supreme Court failed Texas voters today, and they failed American democracy. This is what the end of the Voting Rights Act looks like. Courts that won't protect minority communities, even when the evidence is staring them in the face, unquote. This ruling will have huge political ramifications across the country, not just in Texas.
It will. And Jake, the bottom line is this is the best news the White House has had, politically speaking, all week long, actually perhaps all month long. The reality here is this is going to allow what the White House has wanted from the very beginning, these redrawn maps to help Republicans get elected, to help ensure that House majority. What this ruling does not do, however, though, is affect these individual races. These races still have to be won. And this does not change the environment on the economy. This does not change the environment on what voters think of the Trump administration, local issues as well. So what this does is basically reverts back to what the thinking was all along, that the Republicans in Texas were going to have an edge here. Of course, that set off a nationwide, unprecedented series of redistricting rules. California, of course, is drawing it for the Democrats to have a democratically favored seats, if you will. So there is still very much an open question of these new districts here that have been drawn based on the Trump 2024 election alone. Are these truly as Republican-friendly districts as they were a year ago? We shall see about that. But for now, at least, this is a huge sigh of relief for Republicans and a huge concern for Democrats who thought that they had a sort of an upper hand in this redistricting fight. What it also may do is touch off battles in other states, like Virginia, for example. There is a heavy discussion there of changing the lines to favor Democrats, Maryland perhaps as well. So it does not end the discussion nationwide, but for Texas, it does.
In LA, the Texas Attorney General, Ken Paxton, a Republican, just said, quote, "In the face of Democrats' attempt to abuse the judicial system to steal the U.S. House, I have defended Texas's fundamental right to draw a map that ensures we are represented by Republicans. The big, beautiful map will be in effect for 2026, unquote." The same issue is going through the courts after California voted in favor of redrawing its maps in response to what Texas is doing. How might the U.S. Supreme Court decision impact the Trump Justice Department's lawsuit against California?
Well, Jake, if this decision is applied consistently, it's good news for California. It's good news for any state that wants to change its map, that wants to gerrymander. Important to know, a couple years ago, the U.S. Supreme Court came out with a controversial opinion where they essentially said, we, the federal courts, are basically out of the gerrymandering business. That's for the politicians. That's not for us in the courts. Really, the court's only very limited role, and this was reinforced today, is to make sure there is not a racially discriminatory gerrymander. Now, there was disagreement among the justices today about whether Texas did that or not. But basically what this decision is signaling is that any state that wants to go ahead and change its congressional districts, even mid-decade, like is happening right now, even if it's for partisan advantage, this is really a green light. And heaven knows where this could go with other states that already are underway with their efforts, whether pro-Democrat or pro-Republican, or as Jeff Zeleny says, other states that might want to get in on that action.
Ellie Honig, Jeff Zeleny reacting to the breaking news from the U.S. Supreme Court. Thanks so much.